One day, they were there, responding to messages, showing up, being part of your life in the specific way that people are when they are genuinely present. And then, without a conversation, without an explanation, without the basic human courtesy of a reason, they simply weren't. And the silence they left behind was not the clean silence of a clear ending, but the particular, almost uniquely painful silence of an open question that you did not get to ask and they did not choose to answer. And if you have experienced this, if someone has disappeared from your life without explanation and left you turning the unanswered question of why over and over in a mind that cannot file an unresolved thing away, then this video is going to do two things for you. It is going to explain the specific psychological mechanisms that cause people to disappear without explanation. Not to excuse the behavior, but to make it comprehensible. And it is going to offer you the one psychological reframe that the research consistently identifies as the most useful for the person left behind, because understanding why people ghost is not just intellectually interesting, it is genuinely healing, and healing is what the silence they left deserves. Let's begin with the psychology of the person who disappears, because the behavior that feels from the outside, like cruelty or indifference or cowardice, is almost never any of those things in its primary motivation, even when it produces all of those effects. And understanding its actual psychological roots changes the meaning of the disappearance in a way that is both more accurate and more useful than the interpretations that the abandoned mind tends to generate in the absence of explanation. The most consistent psychological driver of unexplained disappearance is conflict avoidance. Not in the mild preference for peace sense, but in the deeper, anxiety-driven, neurologically grounded sense of a person whose nervous system has learned, through a specific history of experiences, that direct confrontation or honest communication about endings carries a threat level that the avoidance of those conversations, however socially costly, is preferable to facing. Research on attachment styles by psychologist Kim Bartholomew identifies what she calls the dismissive avoidant attachment pattern, a relational orientation characterized by emotional self-sufficiency, discomfort with intimacy, and the tendency to withdraw rather than engage when relationships become emotionally demanding or when the prospect of a difficult conversation arises. As one of the most consistent predictors of ghosting behavior, because the dismissive avoidant person experiences the emotional exposure of explaining a departure as more threatening than the social consequences of simply not explaining it. Which means the disappearance is not a statement about your worth. It is a statement about their emotional capacity, specifically their capacity to tolerate the discomfort of honesty in relational endings. There is also the role of shame, the specific psychological dynamic in which the person who wants to leave has done something or failed to do something that they cannot face explaining, and whose disappearance is not an act of power over you, but an act of flight from the self-confrontation that an honest explanation would require. Because telling you why they are leaving would mean acknowledging something about their own behavior or their own limitations that their self-concept is not currently able to absorb, and the silence is not chosen over you. It is chosen instead of a truth about themselves that they are not ready to tell. And here is the psychological truth that matters most for the person left behind, the one that the research on closure and meaning-making consistently points toward, and that the unanswered question of the disappearance makes genuinely difficult to reach, but genuinely essential to arrive at. The explanation you were not given is almost never about you in the way your mind will insist on making it about you in the absence of other information, and the closure you are waiting for from the person who left is closure that only you can actually give yourself, because closure is not information, it is a decision. The decision to stop holding the file of the unexplained ending open on the grounds that a sufficient explanation might still arrive, and to close it instead on the terms that the available evidence actually supports, which is that a person who could leave without explanation was not capable of the connection that staying would have required, and that the silence they left is not a measure of your worth, but a precise and unambiguous measure of theirs. Subscribe for more mind secrets.